I'll now call the June 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Oak Ridge Town Council to order. Welcome to everybody here tonight and to anyone listening on our YouTube live channel, live stream. We're glad you're here. And as you see, we're again missing our Mayor Pro Tem Jim Kinnaman tonight, who's out of town. I'd now like to invite Mr. Stephen Sumner forward to give the invocation. Please rise as you are able.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we give thanks for all the blessings you've bestowed upon the citizens in the town of Oak Ridge. This past Monday, the town recognized and remembered those brave men and women of our military who made the ultimate sacrifice in giving their lives to protect our liberty and freedoms that we enjoy in this great country. It goes without saying that without these freedoms, we would not be the country we are today. Among those freedoms are the freedom to worship as we please, the freedom of speech, and the freedom to peacefully assemble as we're doing tonight before the town council. Lord, I ask that you bless the council, give them wisdom, guidance, and direction, so that they can make the best decisions for the town and for the citizens of Oak Ridge. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Sumner. We'll now move to item 3, approval of our agenda. Is there a motion, Council?
I move we approve our agenda as presented.
Second. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries and the agenda is approved. We'll move to item 4, approval of the minutes from our May 2022 meeting. Council, you've had the opportunity to review the draft. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the May 5th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries and the minutes are approved. We do not have any resolutions, proclamations, or announcements tonight, I don't believe. So we'll move on to a report from the Guilford County Sheriff's Office, and I'll welcome Corporal Swearingen forward to give that report.
Good evening, everyone. This past month of May, we actually ran 104 calls for service in Oak Ridge. It was 1 911 unknown, 1 abuse call, 1 accident with high velocity, 2 accidents of personal injury, 33 burglar alarms, 1 burglary from a motor vehicle, which was actually over here in the town park. Civil calls, 5 fraud calls. So please keep in mind the scammers are on the uptick again, so please be aware. Don't give out your personal information. If you're receiving a call from a bank, please contact your bank and make sure it's legitimate before you do anything. We encourage people not to give out their personal information over the phone. We ran 2 medical calls with fire, 1 illegal burn, 4 threats, 11 suspicious activities, 1 illegal trash dumping, 4 trespassers, and a variety of other calls for service. With more and more activities being done in the parks, we are again reminding people, because we have been getting hit in the parks throughout the county here recently. If you're going to be out, if you're going to be doing anything, please make sure that you're locking up your valuables. That doesn't mean just lock your car and leave them in the back seat where they're easily visible, where somebody can just break your window and take what they want. But either leave them at home locked inside, or if you need to bring the items with you, please lock them in the trunk or in the glove box, and lock the glove box so that way they're not easily accessible and nobody's going to be able to see anything in your car when they're walking past.
Thank you. Any questions, Council?
Now, are we seeing an uptick in activity, criminal activity here?
Not in the town of Oak Ridge, but with it being summer, the kids getting out of school, sometimes kids be mischievous here and there, but nothing too big. But in the summer months, we typically do see an increase in activity. It's nicer out. People are going to be leaving their cars. They're going to want to be more active outside, which gives people a lot more time and opportunity to look around and take things. If you're going to be going on vacation, talk to your neighbors, make sure that they, somebody that you trust, keep an eye on your house. If they see anything that doesn't look right, we encourage people to call us. We'd rather come out 1,000 times for nothing than miss the one time that'll be something and miss an opportunity to catch somebody that's doing something they shouldn't be doing something with your property.
Have we caught anybody lately?
We actually have. We've been doing some follow-ups. Our detectives, Sergeant Seals has been doing an excellent job making identifications to suspects in some cases, and we have been making some arrests.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll now move on to item 6, a report from the Oak Ridge Fire Department, and I'll invite Philip Lamondola forward to give that report.
Good evening. Thank you for having me out. My name is Philip Lamondola with the Oak Ridge Fire Department. We had a total of 3 fires, 9 false alarms, 2 hazardous material calls or gas leaks, 13 good intent calls, 38 medical calls, and 8 motor vehicle accident, with a total of 80 calls for the month. For the full-time staff and volunteers, we had a total of 538 training hours. And for my good tip for the month, with bad storms coming up, just make sure you've got non-perishable foods, charged flashlights. If you have a generator, make sure it runs and it's got fuel in it and all that good stuff, if it's a portable generator. And that'll be it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sir, did have one question. I noticed the other night, I live on 150. There was about 3 fire vehicles. Was there a structural fire here in Oak Ridge?
So for the whole month, we did not have any structure fires of the month of May. So that would not, I'm not sure what that would have been. It could have been a fire alarm. Usually we have multiple vehicles respond to a fire alarm.
Yeah, these look like they were coming out of from Summerfield.
Yeah, then it was most likely a fire alarm or like a gas leak. Sometimes we'll have Summerfield come depending on where it's at. So that could have been what it was, or a fire alarm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're now going to move to item 7, a public hearing on the 2022-23 fiscal year budget and consideration of the ordinance to adopt the budget. Town Manager Bruce presented his budget message and a summary of the budget at last month's meeting. A copy of his message and the entire budget is available on the back table, I believe. It has also been available on our town website over the past month and as a hard copy here at Town Hall since our May meeting. Tonight, council will be invited to take action on the proposed budget following a period of public comment. But before opening the public hearing, I'll invite John Jenkins, the chair of our Finance Committee, to comment on the committee's role in reviewing and preparing the proposed budget.
Good evening, Council. My name is John Jenkins. I live at 6700 Ashton Park Drive. The Finance Committee meets every year in an overview capacity for the budget. Sam and Bill put the budget together for us, and we review every year last year's budget to this year's budget and projected actual. And we review budget to actual for this year to ensure that we believe that the expenditures that are being done are appropriate and they are within the boundaries of what is authorized by the town council. And then we review next year's budget compared to this year's budget on a line item by line item basis. And this year's budget is a little different because there were several grants that were brought in that inflates the bottom line. It makes the net revenue look way more impressive than it should be because the grant money has to be included in the revenue line when in fact it's not due to operational revenue. So it looks like we're making a whole lot more money than we did because that grant money, we have to match that grant money in kind from our expenditures so in essence, in my opinion, it's not revenue, it's just tit for tat. It's revenue from the standpoint we get it from the state, but we have to spend the same amount of money that we get from the state for the projects that we have going. So, as always, in the Finance Committee's opinion, the financial statements were presented fairly, that the controls are in place to make sure there's not any hanky-panky, if you will, going on with everything. And this year as well, we had a discussion around the tax rate, whether or not the tax rate, well, we do that every year, but it seemed to be more so this year, because with the capital expenditures that the town council have approved, this year the fund balance is going to be reduced by almost $1.5 million. And in future years, it's going to be that or more because of what they're going to do with all the parks and the trails and stuff that are going to be going. So the Finance Committee reviewed the tax rate that we have, and in the context of everything that's going on with this year's budget and future capital expenditures, came to the conclusion that there was no basis for reducing or increasing the tax rate, that we thought that it would be prudent to stay with the tax rate that we have, particularly for coming years. And that's pretty much what the Finance Committee does and did this year. I want to commend the members of the Finance Committee. We probably have the strongest Finance Committee we have in years. We have several CPAs on there. We have several bankers. I'm humbled by the talent around me on the Finance Committee. So that's what we did. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your leadership. I'll now open the public hearing with a 20-minute period for public comments in support of the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. Will the town clerk please keep time for us throughout the hearing? I ask speakers to state their name and address for the record and to keep their comments brief so that everyone who wishes to can speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak during this period? Mr. Walraven.
Good evening. My name is Ben Walraven. I live at 5931 Pepper Road, and I'm up here just to support the remodeling of the Redmond House. I know there's some controversy about the cost, but in checking with some of the council members since the last meeting, I found out that you're too modest when you say you're remodeling it. You're actually building a community center for us, and it has a lot of features that I've been hoping we could have, and that particularly as a senior, maybe some senior members and senior programs could be hosted in that facility. So I just wanted to go on the record to say that I'm in support of it. I'm in support of the estimated costs, and hope that that element of the budget is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Meese.
Hello, my name is Stuart Meese, 1810 Wild Fern Drive. I was a member of the Finance Committee with Chairperson Jenkins, and I wanted to reiterate what he said, excuse me, in regards to the process of our review. It happened many times, several times when we met. We went line for line through the items. There was much discussion. And to what John was saying, the professional abilities of the members of that organization that formed to look at this are quite impressive. As he said, CPAs, bankers. I would also add people that worked in local government, that have run homeowners associations, have been community leaders, work for nonprofits. They have the experience that's needed to make good recommendations to support what Bill and staff have done. I would also say that it's a good representation of the demography of the town of Oak Ridge. There's many different individuals from different stages of life, whether they were empty nesters, whether they were having young children as well, and I think that's important when you're looking at making a decision that benefits many others. And finally, I would say my own experience, I've dealt with other town groups, government groups, and I will say I'm very impressed with the way that this organization, the town, manages its money, very fiscally solvent and fiscally responsible. And that's become very apparent to me the more that I interact with this organization and with this group. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in support? Come on forward. Sorry, I thought that was your hand. Myra Blackburn.
I'm short. My name is Myra Blackburn. I live at 2345 Oak Ridge Road. I'm a lifelong resident of Oak Ridge, and as I look around, I don't see many of us here. I see none on the town council. However, you've been elected to be caretakers of our town and all of its business. And Oak Ridge was incorporated in order to protect it from being eaten up primarily by Greensboro and Kernersville. The goal then was to preserve Oak Ridge as a small town rooted in its rural history. And for the most part, we've done that in the midst of some growing pains and some development. I could go on about all the good that's been accomplished, but at the heart of my remarks tonight is the fate of the Redmond House. I am in favor of preserving the house and restoring it for a new purpose. Some of those ideas were presented in the Northwest Observer article today. I suppose that some would consider me crazy, and as for spending someone else's money, I'm invested by virtue of paying my taxes, so part of that money is mine that I'm willing to spend. Oak Ridge is proud of its historic district and the structures that comprise it. The Redmond House is a lovely reminder of the farming community that it was when my dad and the Redmonds and the Browns and the Benbows and the Barrows and the Staffords farmed this land. Yes, I think that this small house is every bit as historically important as my house, which is the Larkin House, as Maple Glade, as the Bimbo houses, as the old mill. It may not be as grand as some of those structures, but it is an important reminder of Oak Ridge roots in farming. Back to my reference to you as caretakers. Let me just say you should take care of this historic property as those of us and these others must take care of ours. And it isn't always about money.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Mr. Howerton. We'll get there. We'll get there.
My name is Roger Howerton, 2106 Oak Ridge Road. Oak Ridge, North Carolina. I've had that question asked me, where is it? In 48 states. I would always ask, I'd always answer it. Are you familiar with Greensboro? Are you familiar with Winston-Salem? Are you familiar with High Point? They all say yes. I said, well, they're all in the suburbs of Oak Ridge. I've come tonight, you know, I've read all of the articles in the Northwest Observer. I've tried to keep up with the house out on the corner here and what to do with it. From my lifetime up to now, when I was old enough to realize that over 90% of the homes and the people that lived in and around Oak Ridge were farmers. They stayed that way for years. And finally, the day come when they started either dying out or moving or some of this. We still got a few farms today that's in existence. but mighty few. These people were hard workers. All of them were hard workers. They contributed to what was the town known as Oak Ridge. I know there was farmers that was out at Linville store talking about building a Methodist church in Oak Ridge. How are we going to do it? They made a motion to start a horse show. And the Methodist church was built. We are looking now at something that's similar in essence to a heritage. But it's that house on the corner. What to do with it? How much to spend on it? As we think about that, I know in my lifetime, there's been more than one family that's lived in that house. It goes back. I know my first thing that I had to do with it was as I was a child. I was 6 years old, or 8 years old, I think. And I had a sister that was born and died the same day. My mom and dad brought me down to the family at that time that lived in this house and stayed with them for a couple of days. Since that time, I know of 4 other families that have lived there, but none dedicated as the last one was. Stayed with it up until his death. No, Buster Linville gave him permission to stay in that house until death do us die. His wife was also given that permission. And then it would go. We sold it. He sold it to the town, and the town agreed that they could live there until they die, and it would revert back to the town. Now, what to do with the house? I don't know the figure, but I know it's probably going to be an expensive figure to restore that house. But we're talking about history. When we talk about the farmers that have lived in Oak Ridge and gone on, I think this is a prime place myself to recognize. We've just gone through Memorial Day. This is a great place to recognize not only the ones that live there, but the ones that's gone on. The farmers accomplished a lot. And when I look at some of the farms today, and I see what's being built there, those people that's living there today don't know the history of what's gone on before. I think it's up to Oak Ridge. It's up to the council and the finance end of it. It's up to Oak Ridge to support a memorial to those that live there and to those that's going on. You know, we didn't question too much. I happened to be on the council at the time when we bought the land for the park. It was expensive. We didn't have any money then because we had not been receiving the taxes and stuff like this. County commissioners taking that away from us. But we approved it. And we look where we are today. We didn't go broke. And my recommendation would be that we would approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howerton. Who else would like to speak? Ms. Peoples, come on down.
My name is Laura Peoples. I live at 1826 Oak Ridge Road, and I have almost all my life, my family has. And I'm a Peoples and I cry. I didn't come in here with a plan tonight, other than to say that we need a different space from AI. It's a beautiful building. It's not conducive to anything that you want catered so much, especially if there's a rain event, because the kitchen's in a different building. It's not conducive to a really small event. And I like the idea of using the Redmond House for something like that, just because it's not spread out like AI is. So there's that. But listening to Myra and Roger, and knowing that my family was one of those farm families, and our farm is now Foxbury Meadows, and it's beautiful. And Oak Ridge welcomed all of those people that moved into those houses and still do every day. But to have a space that commemorates our farm heritage is necessary. I understand that the town has limited resources, but the town of Oak Ridge is a precious resource.
Thank you.
Redmond House would be a great addition to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Ms. Schoenfeld. Oh, come on. Now go ahead.
Go ahead, Barb.
You beat her to it, Barb.
I was on the end. Barbara Engel, 8524 Rosedale Road, or Drive, rather. I don't even know where I'm at. As most of you know, I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission, and this house, Redmond House, is something really special to this community. And if we start destroying it, what is going to keep us from destroying more historic areas in this town? What we do is try and preserve all this. I've only lived here 20 years, but I've seen a lot of growth, and I just, part of the historicness of this town is what brought us here, and it's just a beautiful area. I also am a member of the Garden Club, and we only had 13 members maybe 2 years ago. And all of a sudden, we have ballooned to 30-plus members, and we keep getting more requests. We used to meet in our homes, but with 30-some people, it's kind of hard, and then still have room for a speaker to speak to us. And it's very hard to find places. So this would be a great use for this center, and also I agree with Ben, I can't think of your name. Hi, Ben. A community center for seniors. It would be, Kernersville has a senior program, Greensboro, High Point, they all have senior programs. Why can't we? Because I can't use the soccer fields. I can't use the baseball, diamonds, fields, whatever. I know we're going to build basketball courts and tennis courts. They all cost a lot of money. So I would like my taxes to go towards this house. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schoenfeld.
Debbie Schoenfeld, 8501 Sansero Farm Court. Mine's going to be a little short. Within the historic district, the design standards promote restoration, adaptive reuse, and preservation of historic properties for continued use and benefit. I'm really excited that Redmond House can be restored and used as an events rental facility. I think it's really something that we need, and I believe it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Yeah.
Ms. Harton, come on down.
I think it's hard to follow up all those great comments. I'm Courtney Benbow Harton. I live at 5901 Pepper Road. And I sent some notes to the council, and this is just a little part of it, and I'll abbreviate it. Jim and I have the house on Pepper Road we restored. It's a 1880, 1900 farmhouse. And we've been thanked by many of my relatives, the Lowrys and some of the Benbows, and by friends and neighbors for taking on the expense and the time to move and save that farmhouse rather than just using the land to build a modern house. Just building a house would have been much less expensive, but we really think what we've done is pleasing. And we've had strangers even stop us and thank us to say they love seeing that old house in the field. Having taken on our own project, we know that the budget for restoring Redmond House would be a worthy investment. And I'm sure there will be ways to find economies with interested local contractors and wise selections on materials. It could also be done in stages, stabilizing the house and completing the exterior repairs first. I'm not a fan of demolition by neglect, and I think the house is part of our park, and it's a calling card to our town right here by Town Hall. And I've been saddened to see some of the other houses in Oak Ridge just melt away. Even Tobacco Barns make me sad that they don't stay and live. No matter the final use of the house or the timing of the project, please approve a budget and honor a commitment for preserving the Redmond House. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harton.
Jim Harton. I live with that lady at 5901 Pepper Road. She only told you half the story from the standpoint of what we've done. She certainly had an objective when we moved back here 6 years ago to restore the house that her great-grandfather built. I had an objective to make sure that the barns, three tobacco barns, one hay barn, one pack house, did not disappear or fall down. So while she was worried about the house, I was outside doing the barns pretty much mostly by myself with some help of some local guys. What we've developed there, frankly, if you come to see us, is a museum of Oak Ridge. It's a museum of the tobacco farmers that are represented in the Redmond House. And this property that my wife talks about goes back in her family to pre-1800. So we're privileged to have done what we did, and I think it sets the pace for what the town should do with the Redmond House. Now in 1977, I came to Oak Ridge as a salesman. Back then, there were probably several hundred tobacco farmers in the area. Today I think there are 2 or 3 that are farming that, but there still are farmers here, and they're still representative of the historic agricultural history of Oak Ridge. And we certainly support that on our farm today, either whether it's cropland or forestry. So my first message to the town is I support this.
I support it not only as a citizen, but I also was a member of the Finance Council, have been working with John and others for 3 years now. So I know that it is possible to do it. Is it politically probable? I don't know. But I know it is financially possible for this town to take the Redmond House and make sure that it survives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I assume that means the 20 minutes is up? If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, they can speak obviously during public comments, but let's see. We will now close the period for comments in support of the proposed budget, and we'll move to a 20-minute period for public comments in opposition to the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. Again, I ask speakers to be brief, to come forward, state their name and address. Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Oh, there you go.
Come on forward.
Town council and audience as well. I do hope that there are some others, if they feel convicted to do so, to speak against the budget.
Can you state your name and address first? Sorry.
First of all, my name is Chuck Salmon. I live at 8505 Merriman Farm Road in Oak Ridge. I'd like to open with, I'm not opposed to everything in the budget, but I do think that there are some things that I would like for the town council to address. And I know that all the wealth of talent on the finance committee, that they address some of these things already. But in just looking at the big picture, this is a huge budget. This budget has grown because of the $2.4 million or whatever involved with grants, and I understand we need to match that. And I understand that's got to come from somewhere. And I understand we have to draw 1.4 million to 1.5 million out of our funds, out of our reserve funds, to be able to match that. But the thing that concerns me most is that all of these things don't need to fall into this fiscal year. They don't need to all be included into this budget. And while I do support the Heritage Farm, a Heritage Park, and many other things in here, and I support the renovation of the Redmond House, I don't think that we as a town need to be trying to address all of these at one time. The town manager's report indicated that this was an ambitious budget. This was an ambitious undertaking by town council. So the marching orders to him or to the finance committee came with these set of goals that these are what we're going to try to achieve. Okay, and I understand why we want to try to do many of those things. But my primary objection is with continuing at the current tax rate. As long as we continue at the current tax rate, when property values went up, the assessment went up roughly 20%, as according to the town manager in these reports I'm reading and other things. So that's an automatic 20% increase based on the valuation of the property taxes that are coming in. In order for us to offset that 20%, then that 0.08 tax rate needs to go down by 0.016, or to about 6.4 if my math is correct. For the town council to not adjust that rate, okay, in light of these conditions, in light of this influence, is essentially the town council voting for a tax increase. No matter how you look at it, the town council is going to vote on a tax increase to the property owners. It's easy next year when we don't get the assessment at the same time just to rubber stamp everything. But the assessment only came this year. So property owners are only faced with that valuation increase this 1 year. And so if town council doesn't address it this year to offset it, then, like I said, it's too easy to sweep under the rug and keep on going. I'm not particularly opposed to any of the spending in the bill, in the budget, but I don't think it all needs to be in this year's budget. I think we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Afternoon. Rob Alderson, 8401 Hartwell Drive.
State your name again, please. I didn't.
Rob Alderson, Alderson, 8401 Chartwell Drive. I have to agree with Chuck on that. This is a conservative community, and we need conservative techniques. And I love the sentiment with the Redmond House. At the same time, we need to be practical. There's community needs that are clearly being desired. There's a, beautiful front porch there, and that could be captured in a building space that can really meet the community's needs. If you want a community center, you could certainly do something interesting with that. When I first saw that charge for $30,000 to look into this house, I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on here? I thought that was pretty excessive. Now we're seeing numbers that I don't think are very fair to a fairly small community. And let's go back to the fact that this is still a park. And if you go back to the very original survey, we've met a lot of those goals that people said that they were after. The Youth League came out in masses, and I was part of that. We've met those goals. Tremendous ball fields, tremendous playgrounds. We cut the budget for the open stadium, which I think should have been bigger, but I think it's nice, and I think it fits the park size. And that budget was around $300,000, and it grew. And we had to reduce the size to meet that budget. Now we're talking about a house that has great sentiment. There's so many people in this room are emotionally tied to that, and I respect that tremendously. One of the features that keeps on getting kicked down the road are things that help the welfare, the health, the physical nature, the mental health. Tennis courts. The Heritage Park came about, tennis courts got kicked to the side. The number one survey response beyond the ball fields was tennis courts. That's a multi-generational tool, from a child to a senior. And you're moving your heart. You're getting in touch with athletics. You're getting in touch with your family. You can play multi-generational. You have a large tennis community out here. So there's a lot of needs out there. I respect, that we want to do everything in the world, but we need to have conservative approach. I would really like to see a little bit more interest in surveying the community and what the community would like to see. It's been a long time since we did a survey. We've accomplished a lot of many goals with the survey, with the park. And there's the number one thing was tennis outside that. Now we have the explosion of pickleball. We have a wonderful group playing pickleball in the parking lot, in the heat, on the asphalt, enjoying themselves. And that's a huge growing thing. That is multi-generational. Mm-hmm. So I would also ask that when you're looking in the tennis courts and that expansion, consider independent pickleball courts. It's a much more enjoyable platform when the court is sized and fenced to that. And I've been to communities where they're standing in line to get on the court. And it appeals very much to the older community that's coming up in the area, like myself. I'm an 18-year citizen, which is, nothing in time compared to many of the citizens here that grew up here, and I can understand why they love it here, because I love it here too. So I just ask that you really be cautious when you're looking at trying to make something more than it was originally designed for. I think you can still capture the essence of that, the feel of that, and complement it with commercial type designed facilities and what exactly we're trying to accomplish. And please consider a survey. It's been, I don't know how many years, probably 10, 15 years. George, you remember when we first did that survey?
Yeah.
So it's been a long time, right? And it was great return on that survey. Do you remember what the number one response was beyond ball fields?
You know, I got to be honest, I don't.
We're not going to make this a conversation.
Well, anyway.
This is only comments.
Anyways, so that's right. I'm sorry about that. But please, review the survey. Review that it's a park, and we're trying to do many things. And community center is a wonderful idea. A senior in that, seniors, and all the benefit can do is great, but you need to have space to accommodate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? If there is no one, we will close the period for comments in opposition to the proposed budget, and we'll now enter a 5-minute rebuttal period for those who are in support of the proposed budget. Is there anyone who wishes to provide a rebuttal?
Nope, got one.
Ms. Schoenfeld.
Debbie Schoenfeld, 8501 San Siro Farm Court. I feel like when we consider these new appraisals that for our property values that we're all being hit with, you also have to consider the fact that the whole country is undergoing a mass wave of inflation. You can't really say that we're going to be getting all this extra income from this increase in valuation of property taxes. And like we're just going to have this abundance of money. The reality is that money is going to have to pay for the inflated costs that it takes to pay for everything, all of the town amenities and town-owned properties and the park and everything. So it's not like you can say that we're getting all this money in and we're just going to have this great time and have a big party with it, because that's not what's happening. This country is undergoing a state of high rates of inflation. We're paying it in gas money. That money is going to act it's going to be just like everything that we're paying for now. The costs are higher. We'll get a little extra money, and thank goodness that we'll have the money to pay for these inflated costs of what it takes us to maintain this town. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during this period of rebuttal? Mr. Browning.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Browning, 8024 Linville Road. Again, I know you're good stewards with our money and kind of the same concerns as Roger Howerton had said. Again, in concerning the renovation of Redmond House, it's too much money. We can't afford it. But again, you know, the initial town council made an investment in the community, and I love the park across the road. Again, I love the baseball fields. We got grandkids that play. But I did want to address the gentleman's concern about the tennis courts. We have tennis courts that are drawn in, designed, and hopefully implemented soon at the Heritage Farm Park. And again, we're working with the pickleball people, and hopefully we could, you know, I'm glad at least to have a temporary space. But I did want to address, we do have tennis and multi-purpose fields drawn in at the Heritage Farm Park. So hopefully, you know, that tennis could happen sooner than later. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in this period of a rebuttal? Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close this period and we'll enter a 5-minute rebuttal period for those who are in opposition to the proposed budget to speak further to address any of the comments that have just been made. Is there anyone who wishes to provide such a rebuttal?
Got one.
Mr. Salmon.
Again, my name is Chuck Salmon, 8505 Merriman Farm Road, Oak Ridge, North Carolina. I agree with Ms. Schoenfeld that this is a huge period. We're all experiencing it every day with every aspect of our life, from groceries to fuel, and now to property valuation assessments. However, we're not experiencing 20% in 1 year. We may be experiencing 8% inflation. We may be experiencing 10. I realize that that things go up over time, generally speaking, and that's no different. But each year we have more and more residents moving into Oak Ridge. They build a house, that house goes on the tax rolls. It's assessed tax. It's paid. The houses they're building now, $800,000, $900,000 are a lot different than the ones that I bought 18 years ago, $350,000. It's a lot different. The tax hasn't changed appreciably. I too am a conservative, and I realize most of the people in this room are probably conservatives, but I believe if the town council votes to approve this, then you're taking advantage of the situation. Because the county's already increased the assessments, okay? There's nothing you can do about that. But the 5 of you all do have a say-so in how that money's spent, and how much is spent, and what that tax rate is, and when it's spent. So, based off of what I presume, or what I've been able to glean about the budget, if we reduce the tax rate to a level in the mid-6s, then we're only talking about, $180,000, $200,000, and, Sam Anders could give you exactly what that is, difference in the revenue coming into the town. This is not a huge chunk of change. I'm just simply asking that you revise, that you don't undertake all of this spending in 1 year, that you say there's $180,000 that we're willing to cut out of our budget to keep from having a tax increase on our citizens this year, and delay that till next year, whether that's part of Heritage Park, whether that's part of the Redmond House, or whatever it is, that you find a way to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during this period of rebuttal? Seeing no one, I will close this 5-minute period, and I will also close the public hearing. Council, I now invite you to consider the proposed budget as well as the statements that have been made here during this public hearing. I would entertain a motion at this point or discussion at your pleasure.
I think we have to have a motion to discuss.
Second.
And actually, the motion would be to approve the ordinance.
Yes, we need a motion on the matter at hand.
Hang on, let me
Make a motion.
Let me get you the proper wording.
Okay.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-01, an ordinance adopting and ratifying the Town of Oak Ridge budget for fiscal year 2022-23.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Now we'll proceed to discussion. We'll start with you, Councilman McClellan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank everyone who spoke here tonight. I want to thank our Finance Committee for their outstanding work on our budget. I can tell you in all candor that this budget contains no fat. Regarding taxes, as some of you know, early on in the process, I had asked for the committee to review the impact of a revenue neutral rate on the budget. It was found by the committee that a revenue neutral rate of 0.0674 would be inadequate to fund the planned capital improvements, provide essential services, and maintain adequate reserves for future uncertainties. Even maintaining the current tax rate of 8 cents does not guarantee that we will be able to meet our timeline for planned capital improvements, since the numbers used in our CIP originated before the current spike in inflation. Be assured that we will be monitoring the budget throughout the 2022-2023 fiscal year, and if necessary, we will make adjustments on the CIP timeline as needed. I will support the adoption of this budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pittman.
Yes, to start, in my opinion, this is a good fiscally sound budget that addresses not only this year's town needs, but lays a foundation for the future years because of all of these economic uncertainties that we are facing. Two items seem to be dominating the budget discussion: the Redmond House and the tax rate. So I'll briefly address those. Both topics could take up the entire evening, and I'm happy to have those discussions with anybody who would like to have them. My phone number's on the website. But in terms of the Redmond House, I think there is overwhelming support in the community to preserve the structure through renovation and repurposing it for public use. The town owns the property. Therefore, we are responsible for the property. While the estimated costs included in the budget are high, this council's work is not done. There are multiple decision points in the coming year. We must ensure that the property is preserved in a way that contributes to and strengthens our historic district, as well as gives good value back to the residents relative to the tax dollars spent in the form of a community gathering space. Second, the tax rate. Yes, the revaluation of property by Guilford County will result in a larger tax bill for residents. For some residents, it will be significantly larger. And although most of our eyes instinctively go to the bottom line, to the total tax on our bill, what we consider tonight related to this budget is the Oak Ridge portion of that tax. On average, the Oak Ridge increase will be $67. One-time increase that will stay the same for the next 5 years until there's another revaluation. On the flip side of that, we have the operating cost of the town. They're going up just like our household costs are rising. Every time you see that beautifully cut and manicured park, there's been a lot of fuel in those lawnmowers. The cost for the long-term capital projects that have been vetted over a period of year, their costs have continued to rise and will continue to rise. They will, both operating and capital, I expect will continue to rise each of the 5 years. So this revenue boost is a one-time deal that will be stable for 5 years, but our cost will continue to rise throughout the 5 years. And I will be very surprised if our increased cost, whether it's construction cost or operating cost, don't ultimately exceed that 20%. I think we're going to have some belt tightening to do in the next 5 years, even with keeping the rate the same. With that in mind, with the increasing cost and facing all these economic uncertainties, I believe that lowering the tax rate is premature. I hope I'm wrong, but I do believe that maintaining the same rate is the prudent course. So now that we've talked about the controversial budget items, I'd like to point out a few of the great things that this budget has. One, we continue providing the excellent service that we do to our citizens every day from this town hall and with our parks. But it also has matching funds for the Veterans Honor Green. It has conservation and preservation funds through the Core Grant Initiative. It has funds for trail development. It has funds for new park facilities at Heritage Farm Park, in which tennis courts are on our CIP in a future year. It supports our community events like Light Up the Night, Canine Capers, and Heritage Day. It supports our partnership with ORYA to provide excellent athletic opportunities for our youth. It provides historic preservation grants and pedestrian and town core improvements. And this is just what I just kind of pulled out. I've been on the Finance Committee, I've seen how they work, But these are some of the standout things that Oak Ridge does so well. So while we may not agree on every line item on what the next few years will bring financially or economically, I think that our town manager, our finance officer, and our finance committee have done a great job on a budget that serves the needs of Oak Ridge this year and prepares the town for future challenges. And I will support the budget.
Thank you. Councilman Sullivan.
I'll try not to repeat what's already been said. I agree with both Councilman McClellan and Councilwoman Pittman. I first want to start by thanking Mr. Bruce, Mr. Anders, Mr. Jenkins, and the entire Finance Committee for their work in crafting this budget. In my previous terms on council, I've served as liaison to Finance several times. I've always been impressed by their due diligence and their attention to detail that resulted in budgets we could always have confidence in. And I feel this budget is no exception. I take seriously their recommendations, including not offering a tax rate reduction at this time. I'm familiar with our budget process, but I was not familiar with this particular budget. So over the last several days, I've taken the time to look at the details and look at the concerns behind both their budget and their recommendation. I crunched the numbers. I looked at the budget. I looked at our capital improvement program. And I looked at all the variables that might affect them. I even earlier today discussed the pros and cons of a minimal tax rate increase with my fellow council members, even offering specific numbers.
I think you meant decrease, right? You said increase. You meant
decrease.
A decrease.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Decrease for sure. But in the end, the conclusion I drew after all of that work and our discussions was there are simply too many variables beyond our control over which we have no control, that we cannot predict, that make it not feasible to consider a tax increase, a tax reduction at this time. I think as they have done in previous years, I think next year Mr. Jenkins and his committee will once again give consideration to a possible tax rate reduction if that is warranted by their numbers. I think one thing I want to try to put this in perspective. I think one thing we tend to forget that total tax bill we get in the mail that's going to create some sticker shock this year is really has 3 line items on it. The biggest one is the county tax rate, which currently stands at 73.05 cents per $100 valuation. Next is the Oak Ridge Fire District, and that tax rate is 9.7 cents per $100. And finally, the town of Oak Ridge with its current rate at 8 cents per $100. So of that total tax bill, Oak Ridge's part is 8.8%. For the average homeowner, and Councilwoman Pittman mentioned the $67 average increase. For most of us, our tax bill for the town will not exceed $400. And quite honestly, when you look at all the town offers and all the town does for our citizens, I think that represents an absolutely incredible value. $400 a year. The capital improvement projects represent a huge portion of this budget. Our operating budget's about $1.5 million. The capital improvements total about 5.8, if I have the numbers correct, and I think I do. Most of those projects are still in the development stage. There's engineering and planning work left to be done before we can even get to the point of understanding what those actual costs are going to be. Some of those we'll do this year, including the Redmond House, including the park improvements, the Heritage Farm Park improvements, and others. But at every step along the way, it is my intent to cast a critical eye on all of those costs, to look at where there are potential savings. And we may have to rethink some of these projects. We may have to postpone some of these projects. But we are doing what our citizens have said they would like for us to do with their tax dollars, and that is our commitment. I am in favor of this budget, and I will vote in favor.
Thank you. I agree with most of what's been said. I think this is an excellent budget. As a town, as a town council, we continue to be ambitious in our vision, but cautious and conservative in the execution of town projects. I am concerned that inflation is probably leaving a lot of our budget items already in the dust and may result in significantly higher costs across the board. So I agree that it's prudent not to change the tax rate at this point. I also want everyone to understand that when you decrease the tax rate, there's a ripple effect over multiple years unless you decide at some point to raise taxes, which is a difficult thing to do, frankly. But that ripple effect affects how much we can put. We're pulling a lot out of our reserves. That ripple effect will affect greatly how quickly we can rebuild those reserves. I don't have any illusions that the wonderful things we're doing now in developing the Heritage Farm Park and the Redmond House, the new name for it that the subcommittee has tentatively named it the Farmhouse Community Center. That's one project, and there are many others that Councilwoman Pittman has listed. I don't think this is the end of good ideas that this council or our residents have for Oak Ridge. I don't think there are going to be many things as big as the Heritage Farm Park, but we do have one other very big project on the horizon, which is water for fire suppression, which we've just gotten the preliminary report on that. And those are some huge costs, and those aren't reflected anywhere yet in our capital improvement budget. We're also talking about doing some things potentially in our commercial core, but the things that are listed in our capital project and indeed in this year's budget aren't the only things that we're looking to do to continue making this Oak Ridge a wonderful place to live. As a reminder, we did do a survey in response to what one of the speakers said. We did do a survey 3 years ago that did address the project that is to give the Redmond House a new use as the Farmhouse Community Center. It is a two-pronged project. It is to restore a historic house and preserve it for posterity and new use as a public rental space. It's in a beautiful, perfect location in our town park, adjacent to parking, and it'll be an ideal option for many, especially those who don't have large homes. It will be affordable for people to use. I think it will serve a very real need identified through the survey a few years ago for a year-round indoor affordable space. I had some good news today. I was having a discussion with Representative Faircloth, who's the North Carolina representative for our district, and he was asking me what some of the projects are that we have coming up in the next year, and I mentioned the Farmhouse Community Project, and he said, well, how much is that? He was interested. And I told him, and he said, well, we can't support that, but we could probably give you $75,000. I said, really? He said, send me an email. Well, I sent him an email. That's not a done deal, but he said there's a good chance of it. And as most people probably don't know, about a year and a half ago, the county, they're receiving $107 million in ARPA money, and they invited all the towns and other nonprofits to submit requests. The request that we submitted had three parts. One part for water, a couple $1 million for water we requested, We requested money for almost the full cost of the Farmhouse Community Center, and we requested funds for the Bandera Farm project, which is a multi-jurisdictional project right outside our border, technically in Summerfield, but that this town has supported. So we're still waiting to hear about that. They're not making those decisions quickly. But there is additional funding possibly out there. So with that being said, I am strongly in favor of this budget, and as my fellow council members, I am deeply appreciative to those who have spent a few months poring over these details and giving us these recommendations. Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion, council? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries and the proposed budget for the next fiscal year is approved. We'll now move on to a second public hearing regarding petitions for voluntary annexation and approval of an ordinance to extend the town's corporate limits. Town Manager Bruce or Planning Director Taylor, would one of you like to introduce this item?
I can go ahead and provide some introductory comments. This is the second year that the town has solicited voluntary applications for annexation as part of the town council's strategic initiative to review the corporate boundaries and to accept voluntary petitions where they're eligible. Starting in February, we sent out social media information included on our website, spoke with the local media, and sent out some letters to some targeted property owners, inviting them to apply for annexation. You may recall that the year before, we had some eligible properties that were deemed satellite properties. They were eligible, but we held them over because there were some additional paperwork that needed to be done for those properties. Some of those are also included in this year's round of annexations. Both the town clerk and the town attorney have certified their eligibility, and it's in the form of an ordinance for your approval tonight. In total, there are 21 properties that have been deemed eligible.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Council will proceed to a public hearing followed by a motion and discussion. I'll now open the public hearing for those who wish to speak in favor of the proposed annexations. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, I will close the period for comments in favor of the proposed ordinance, and I'll open a second 20-minute period for public comment in opposition to the proposed ordinance and annexation. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Seeing no one, I will also close that period. And we will then close, since we don't need rebuttals, we will close the public hearing. Council, I now invite you to consider the materials you received, and I'll invite a motion on this matter.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2022-02, an ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Oak Ridge under the authority granted by Chapter 160A, Article 4A, Parts 1 and 4 of the North Carolina General Statutes.
Is there a second? Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Council, is there any discussion?
Welcome to Oak Ridge.
Yeah, I'm glad this has become an annual process, because I think with that kind of comes efficiencies, and you get used to preparing them. And also, I think it gives our neighboring residents, some history in which they hear that their neighbor came in, so now they can. And other than that, I just say welcome to all the new residents. I'd love to get to know you. Give me a call.
Comments? And I'd like to thank our staff and our town attorney. And I think next year we've had some discussion about possibly targeting some of the areas we've sort of sent out broad letters in the past, but possibly sending letters to specific areas that would help us kind of consolidate the town's footprint. But of course, these Applying for voluntary annexation is exactly that. It is completely voluntary. But again, as Councilwoman Pittman has said, we welcome all the new residents. And without further ado, all in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Thank you. We'll now move to item 8, the town manager's report. Mr. Bruce.
Thank you. I've got 2 requests for action and then 3 brief updates for council this evening. First request is to consider the appointment of Steve Sumner as an alternate on the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Council, in accordance with our policy regarding standing boards and committees and based on a consensus vote of this council, consideration of this appointment has been placed on tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we appoint Steve Sumner as an alternate on the Historic Preservation Committee. I want to make sure I have that right.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries and the appointment is approved. Congratulations and thank you for being willing to serve the town in this capacity.
The second item I have for you is a request to surplus a golf cart that the Parks and Rec Department has utilized. Per the requirements of our surplus ordinance, council first declares property surplus, and then that authorizes staff to dispose of the property in the most effective manner that we can find. This particular golf cart served the department well. It's past its useful life. It's got value as parts, and that's how we intend to dispose of it.
Thank you. Council, what is your pleasure on this?
I make a motion that we declare the 2008 Yamaha golf cart as surplus and authorize the town manager to sell it for parts.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? No. Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion carries and we are surplusing.
Thank you. And to provide a brief update on the Heritage Farm Park, which has got a lot of discussion tonight, I will say that construction plans are complete pending a final resolution on our search for a sufficient water supply. This is an update that you've heard before. We're still, unfortunately, searching for that combination of wells that's going to provide us an adequate water supply. We've investigated the use of 2 existing wells and have drilled 1 new well with 1 new well pending, looking for a supply that's sufficient for irrigation as well as restroom use. Once that new well is drilled, we'll know our total water supply, and we'll have the information necessary for our engineer to advise on a path forward, which could include construction of a storage tank if we find that those final flows are not sufficient to provide water that's needed during the periods of highest demand. So we have some options that'll come forward to council when we have those final numbers. I will say that our finance officer continues to be in touch with several of the banks that provided rate quotes to the town, so they're aware of our timing and are still very much interested in doing business with us. Though, of course, our first step following completion of construction drawings is to send the project out for bid. We're well within our time constraints set by both our Part F and ARPA awards, which have 2025 and 2026 timeframes. So there's no risk of running into sort of timing issues with those grants, although we are moving forward with all prudence in getting these answers.
Thank you.
Secondly, to report on the 68-150 project, and I've been asked to report on this frequently just to remind folks that this is a project, and it's a big project that will be coming forward. The current schedule is to be let in the spring of 2023, and I've received no information that that schedule has changed. And as a reminder, that project will include safety improvements to NC 68 from Linville Road to 150, which will include the elimination of some crossover traffic and the addition of sidewalks and crosswalks. The roundabouts, of course, installed at Linville Road and 68, as well as Marketplace Drive in 150, which eliminates traffic conflict points and also will slow traffic through the town core. And then improvements at the 68-150 intersection will include removal of the slip lanes, squaring off that intersection, adding crosswalks, and generally improving pedestrian and vehicular safety. It will be a 2-year construction project once it begins, and there will be an opportunity for council to review and approve a municipal agreement with DOT to provide funding for our share of sidewalks and other improvements as part of that project.
Thank you.
And lastly, I'm happy to report that the expansion of the Oak Ridge Military Academy school zone on 150 is complete. This was driven by a citizen request. Several citizens actually had requested this and was supported by the Military Academy. And I'd like to thank DOT for investigating and making that happen. The school zone now, if you've driven down 150, you'll notice now incorporates the portion of the campus that's in front of the baseball fields and will require drivers to slow down as they approach the baseball fields.
Thank you. And I also want to thank staff, especially our town clerk, who I think came up with the solution when we were having lots of back and forth emails with neighbors. I think you were the one who suggested extending the school zone, but I think you also, let's see, what's the right word, hounded NCDOT to move the project forward. So, thank you. Is there any other business?
That's all, thank you.
You have one question. Okay, so 2023, when they're going to start road constructions.
That's right.
Have they verbally confirmed that that's still the date?
That's the date on the TIP, which is the programming document for DOT. So as that's the official start date.
So we have that in writing?
Yes, until,
okay.
I mean, they can always adjust that schedule.
Yeah.
And they have done that in the past, but all I can say is that's the schedule that's been published at this point, and that's the best
I
information
just want to
we
make
have.
sure, I mean, you know.
Right.
Because that's been kind of holding up some of our sidewalk projects over on the east side of 150.
Understood.
True. Thank you. We will now move to new business, item 9. And did I miss public comments?
No.
This is just a long meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Down at number 10.
Okay. Item 9, new business. We're going to consider a resolution adopting the town's water system fees and charges schedule. Mr. Bruce, would you like to introduce this item?
Sure. As council is aware, over the last year or so, there have been several steps the council has taken to further the establishment of the town of Oak Ridge water system. We've adopted water rules. We've received an approval from DEQ on our water system management plan. We've contracted with a provider. We have a water advisory committee that's meeting monthly now to advise us on policy matters related to water. We're very close at this point to accepting the first customers of the water system when the Honeycutt Reserve subdivision is completed, likely sometime this summer. This is another step in that process, and that is to set the water rates and fees for the water system. These rates and fees were recommended by our contracted provider. They were vetted by the Water Advisory Committee, reviewed with, in terms of fairness with neighboring jurisdictions, and also in light of the needs of maintaining solvency for the water system. There's a series, several pages worth of fees, but really I think what is of most interest is the proposed rate, which is $21 plus, well, I thought I had memorized it, but I haven't.
$6.50.
$21 plus $6.50 per 1,000 gallons, which is based on the feasibility study that Envirolink conducted for the town several years ago, with a slight adjustment based on the increase in costs that we've seen in the last several years.
Thank you. Council, you've received the proposed resolution and all of the proposed water system fee schedule. What is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution R-2022-05, a resolution adopting the Town of Oak Ridge water system fees and charges schedule.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. The fee schedule, the resolution. It's a resolution. Thank you. Sorry.
It's a resolution.
We will now move to Item B, under new business, discussion of the 2023 Music in the Park sponsorship program. I believe the co-chairs of the Parks and Rec Committee, okay, just one of the co-chairs, Mr. Garrett, will present this item.
My name is John Garrett. I live at 8604 Broomfield Road here in Oak Ridge, and I'm co-chair of the Oak Ridge Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Several months ago, the Park and Recreation Advisory Board formed a subcommittee to determine how the Music in the Park experience could be improved and how to offer more diverse music selection to Oak Ridge citizens. The committee members are Phyllis Andrews, Ashley Royal, Kelly Riddle, and Maureen Shepard. During the May board meeting that was last month, these committee recommendations were reviewed. First is that Music in the Park 2023 season would be a trial period of 2 events with community bands, which is what we've been doing for the past number of years, and 4 events with Piedmont Triad bands sponsored by community businesses or organizations. Well, that's different in that we've not had sponsorship before, and it would also allow us to select bands from a little broader area. Ideally, it would be bands with a little higher quality. It would also be more expensive. They learned that bands are currently booking for next summer. So I'm asking, in a moment I'll ask that you make a decision tonight, and the reason is because there is some time element here. Secondly, we are recommending that we add food trucks with a variety of cuisines only during the 4 sponsored events. The 2 events that would not be sponsored, we would still use the Oak Ridge trailer and hot dogs and hamburgers. Third recommendation is to permit the sale of alcoholic beverages only during the 4 sponsored events. Before the Town Council's July monthly meeting, the board will submit and request approval of a written preliminary guidelines and procedures for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to use when selecting sponsoring organizations or businesses, permitting alcohol vendors, and addressing safety concerns during these events. Prior to the 2024 season, a critical review, that would be after next year's season, a critical review will determine whether to continue or revise these recommendations. Should the recommendations be continued, a final guideline or procedures document will be drafted. Certainly, you'll have the opportunity to review and have input on that. The board requests Town Council approve tonight the 2023 season sponsorship of 4 Music in the Park events, adding of food trucks, and the sale of alcoholic beverages for this trial period only. Do you have any questions for me?
So the food trucks and the alcohol vendor would be permitted for just those 4?
Just those 4.
And this is just for the current season?
The upcoming season,
as of
yes.
right now?
Correct.
Now, can this also be used later on, maybe to expand that a little bit, or?
It'd certainly be your pleasure to do that. We're only, at this point, recommending the 2023 season. And then make it.
And then we, from that point, then consider whether to take it on forward.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, I see it, as a positive, for kind of showcasing our businesses here locally. Consider that we do have at least several that are in the beer and, this is beer and wine, am I correct?
Correct.
We're not talking about
No
anything.
hard spirits.
Okay. And so that do the craft beer and You know, we have several businesses that do that, and also several other businesses that also have the food truck side. So it's a great way to promote, you know, our businesses here locally. And of course, even the sponsorship. I mean, that's kind of exciting. I can think of at least one member here who's in this audience and is a proud member of the Oak Ridge Business Merchants Association that's in the audience. I think, you know, this would be a great way to sponsor and get your name out and help to put Oak Ridge on the map. Although it is on the map, but I mean, even a greater presence.
I think the subcommittee was surprised how much interest there was in sponsorship.
Yeah.
There was one particular potential sponsor that was asked if they could sponsor all four.
Wow.
We certainly wouldn't want to do that, but they asked.
But the point is that there's the interest already.
George, could you speak up a little bit? Some are having trouble hearing. Speak right into the mic.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's actually me, George.
So in other words, we have tremendous interest already.
Yes.
And we haven't even done it.
Right.
Wow.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pittman.
I just want to clarify, tonight you're looking for kind of approval of the concept.
Yes.
For 4 events to have food trucks and alcohol with sponsors, and that in July you would bring us the specific policy that you would use to govern this and how you would hire people for the season as a trial. I would guess that you would use this as a model to see,
that's a good
you know, what
definition.
you need to do
To make it happen.
before we kind of have a comprehensive policy, if we go in that direction.
I suspect that 2023 will get some experience under our belts and have some refinements for the following year.
Sure. Okay.
Good.
Councilman Sullivan.
Thank you, Martha. I was going to ask the same questions because I couldn't hear all of the comments. We desperately need that new sound system.
That's coming soon. We just approved the budget. That's another great thing in the budget. I would just say that I know we've talked about this, but it is important that using the experience gained from this, trying something pretty new for us,
Yes.
we do need to craft a policy for the entire park because it's got to be very clear, first of all, I think it already is, but we're not approving alcohol in the park. We're approving alcohol at 4 events, probably provided by very specific vendors in very specific locations with safety protocols that you will develop.
For sure.
And then based on that, this council, with input from Parks and Rec, can determine whether that might be allowed given sort of similar parameters for other events.
Could be, yes.
Possibly. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, George.
Council, is there a motion on this matter?
I make the motion that we give our Parks and Rec Advisory Board permission or advise them to proceed and develop their policy for this coming season of Music in the Park that would include sponsorships, food trucks, and alcohol vendors.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none?
Hey, I'm a Methodist. You know, we're okay with it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate all the work you're doing. Okay, we finally made it to public comments. Item number 10, public comments. Will now enter the first of 2 periods for public comment. Speakers must provide their name and address for the record and are asked to keep their comments under 3 minutes in length. Is there anyone who wishes to speak tonight?
I got a couple hands
Ms.
up.
Pikett.
Thank you. My name is Cherry Pikett, and I actually live in Summerfield here in Guilford County.
Can you give your address?
Yes, 7804 Robinson Road, Summerfield.
Thank you.
I'm going to be talking about the schools. Parents with children in the Guilford County schools have a right to know that social emotional learning has been hijacked by critical race theorists. They have a right to know about its subtle, coercive methods of deeply held belief systems of Marxists and communists, such as Paulo Freire and Herbert Marcuse, to name a few. It's like a religious cult. Doesn't the First Amendment say Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion? At least one of the social emotional learning curriculums being used in our schools is called Transformative. It is from the organization CASEL.org, it's CASEL, Collaborative of Academic Social Emotional Learning. And there are 5 pillars attached to this curriculum. Hate is created based on race, and this is racist. These programs in our schools, based on racist views and shame, have damaged thousands of our children. Freire uses the word transformation all throughout his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Herbert Marcuse wrote these words: "The ghetto population of the United States constitutes such a force, confined to small areas of living and dying. It can be more easily organized and directed. Moreover, located in the core cities of the country, the ghetto forms natural geographical centers from which the struggle can be mounted against the targets. Their location makes for spreading and contagious upheavals. The fact is, at present in the United States, the black population appears as the most natural force of rebellion." My words. This is what is happening in our schools, and I believe social emotional learning unravels our children's beliefs and values instilled from parents, church, or grandparents, and then changes it into anger and hate against their situation, against their family, hate against America, and against the white population. Telling the children of all colors over and over they are oppressed and the white children are responsible. This which puts wedges between our children that didn't exist before. After Pillar 5 of this curriculum, Transformative Social Emotional Learning, has been completed, the children will be transformed into someone their parents will not recognize. Here is a quote by Robert Jagers, who works at CASEL.org, and he is one of the authors of this curriculum. And he says this about the youth in the classroom: "Independent relationships refer to situations in which youth have voice and actively participate, and adults relinquish their control." We're seeing that in our schools now. For more information, go to takebackourschools-gcs.com. And I actually have reference copies. I have a copy of references for my information here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Go ahead, Ms. Adams, come forward. And you're next. Your spot is reserved.
Good evening. I also have some documents I wanted to share. Am I allowed to share that with you now, or do I just leave it for you later?
Why don't you leave it for us later?
Okay, all right.
Could you give your name?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. My name is Maria Adams, and I reside at 5999 Morganshire Drive, Summerfield. Thank you, Oak Ridge Town Council, for the opportunity to speak today. I do live in Summerfield, but I do own an interior design business with an Oak Ridge mailing address, and I'm an active member of the Oak Ridge community, volunteering and participating in various town events to include Ridge Fest, the Great Pumpkin event. And as some of you may know, a few seasons ago, I volunteered my time and services as the lead designer for Christmas at Maple Glade, at Oak Ridge Military Academy. As an active member of the community and a parent of school-aged children, I have genuine concerns, just as Ms. Pikett was saying, about our public school system. I realize the members of this town council have no control over GCS School Board, but each of us in this room does have a voice. And considering that there's been a lot of discussion about our taxes and how our taxes are applied, that everyone here has a vested interest in our school system. Recently, at Northern High School, 2 parents came forward to challenge a book that was assigned to students in their children's AP English class. I've read the pages in question, and I've provided a copy for you here. Due to the explicit sexual content that could be considered by many adults as pornography, it truly concerns me that this book was assigned to minor students. But what concerns me more is that the Media Advisory Committee at Northern High School felt it wasn't an issue, and didn't place any restrictions on the book. At the very least, as a parent, I think that the book should come with an advisory warning and a parent opt-in consent form, but that is not the case. I greatly value and appreciate our teachers. We have some great teachers at Guilford County Schools, but just as in all industries, there are some bad apples. So needless to say, it concerns me that a potential bad apple teacher could use the sexual explicit passages in these pages to have inappropriate conversations with students. As a matter of fact, there has already been an arrest at Northern High School. In early October of 2021, which means this school year, Coach Connor Earp was arrested and charged with a felony indecent liberties with a child under the age of 16. As you can see, using this book with the explicit sexual content could open the door and put our children at risk of inappropriate and possibly dangerous predators. I bring this to your attention and to the attention of all Oak Ridge citizens so that you can be engaged and vigilant about your children's education. If you disagree with the curriculum your children are being taught, speak up. Discuss it with your child's teacher, discuss it with your principal, and take your concerns to the Board of Education. Do not be silent. Use your voice. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Blackburn?
My name is Myra Blackburn. I live at 2345 Oak Ridge Road. And just a brief comment on the extension of the school zone. I am so thrilled because I turn right out of my driveway and I'm in the school zone. Theoretically, it's going to slow traffic down. It has yet to do so because it's new, but I think it's going to take some policing to make that slowdown happen. And I'm hoping the town can pressure the sheriff's department a little bit to he can sit in my driveway if he wants to. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Great offer. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Ms. Dimchowski.
Patty Dimchowski, 7320 Hidden View Drive. 2 things. First, I'd like to thank the ladies for coming tonight. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. The second thing is, I'd like to thank the council on the Music in the Park sponsorship program, approving that. I went to Summerfield, their park program last year, and they have sponsorship programs there, and it was amazing. It was just amazing. So hopefully our Parks and Rec group, who do a fabulous job, will continue that. So just wanted to add that in.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Seeing no one, we will move on to our next item, which is the monthly financial update, and I'll invite Finance Officer Sam Anders to present the update.
Good evening, Council. And I know I can tell from the look on y'all's faces, this is the most exciting point of the entire meeting, right?
I'm smiling.
You're a CPA like me. When somebody says, let's talk about a budget, we just grin from ear to ear.
Exactly.
Everybody else zones out. So, but overall, everything's along normal. Everyone should have gotten the finance officer's report and the financial statements by email last night. On the reports, holding a normal position, strong cash position, low liabilities, our fund balance committed to capital projects, and the various other assigned committed fund balances and our unassigned fund balance. For the month, we had $74,275.75 in revenues. These were sales tax and property tax disbursement, interest, dog park donations, other park revenues. We had some P&Z fees. The beer and wine excise tax was received. I'll come back to that. Another quarterly solid waste disposal tax, and some receipts from special events and donations to the Veterans Honor Green. The beer and wine excise tax is an annual. It's the beer and wine primarily sold convenience stores, grocery stores, things like that in our jurisdiction. And for the first time in quite a number of years, and especially pursuant to COVID, that number is down this year from our budgeted projection. We were shooting for about 32,000 based on prior history and prior trends, and we received 29,000. So down a couple of thousand roughly. So that's an area we're going to watch. That wasn't in the state's guidance last year, so I'm reevaluating on that number slightly. But any of the trends we like to keep an eye on. Other than that, for the month, we spent $97,542, so we drew the fund balance down by $23,000. Behind that, you've got Schedule 2, which has got all of your fine detail. Schedule 1 with the bank balances, Schedule 2 with the fine detail, and then followed by our assets and our liability statement, which is the loan on Schedule 4, the loan for the Whitaker property that became the new phase of the park. And we've got our payment coming up July 16th. So we're making preparations for that. On activity, wire transfer has been received for property taxes of $1,272.65, motor vehicle taxes $74.76.13. Total funds received through May 31 is $8,748.78. This is normal for this time of year. The property taxes are, most of them were received by January. So that's fairly normal for that drop down. Motor vehicle tax is staying stable and along with our trends and the lines of collection we've seen in the past. Investments at our banks are being monitored. We are watching for any improvement in the rate structure. As in item D, we've supported the staff with grant compliance. We're still monitoring the bid process, as Bill pointed out, with the ARPA and the SCIF grants and our CIP process. Reached out to the auditors. We're trying to go ahead and get scheduled for the field work to go ahead and get an idea on that, because also this year we will be working some on the grant stuff, advising them on that, but we should not have to have the single audit until this next year is the plan right now. But our auditors have responded back. I have a conference call set for 10 o'clock Monday morning with the audit manager. So we're working on getting ready for that. We're also planning out our year-end closing procedures and all the normal stuff that we do, which means if you come here on July the 1st, you will see Jennifer here with Sandra in the nice cool air conditioning, and you will see me sweating to death hiking across the park counting various pieces and parts. It's funny how that always seems to happen every year. But we are preparing for that. I do have 3 requests. I'll start with the first one. Bill had sent you some information. And this request for authorization to establish the Water Enterprise Fund and seed this new fund with $50,000 transferred from the general fund. That would be from the undesignated fund balance. The Water Advisory Committee has recommended this amount as the balance needed to start the new fund. It's given the possibility for water connection fees to come in possibly before the end of the month, which ends our fiscal year. We need to have this fund up. We need to have the bank accounts established because an enterprise fund this is our first one. And an enterprise fund, for those that are incredibly active in boring accounting topics, is the term that is used for a governmental or nonprofit entity starting a fund that is treated like a business. The water fund will operate just like a business. So this is basically $50,000 is essentially, if you were a for-profit, you're buying the stock in the company. The money will go in. We're not going to spend it all instantaneously. That's just to establish it, to get it open and get everything lined up. We have to maintain the enterprise fund totally segregated. It is a standalone. So We'll have it isolated in its own fund group. We will have it isolated with its own chart of accounts. And once we do this, I know this is going to excite you, you will have an additional financial statement in here for the water fund. You will still see our normal, and then you will see the enterprise fund. And then when the auditors come about, you will see another section in the audit added in. So this is a big step for Oak Ridge. We're following the old KISS principle that we like to talk about, that I was told about as a young fireman, keep it simple, stupid, which is what you're supposed to tell yourself. We're going to start out with a very basic but flexible chart that we can expand. The folks working with us on the water system provided one, and it's great, and we're going to use parts of it, but it kind of covers a lot of other things in water that we don't have, like maintaining a reservoir and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to, we do need to establish this. Also, we'll achieve a little bit of cost savings, because if we establish it and basically just have this contribution in and whatever few fees may come in, very small amount of audit work for this year. The bulk of setting the system up and the stuff starting and the billings and all will be after July 1 in the next budget year, and we can achieve some economies of scale by having that in next year, because with the park construction, the ARPA grants and all of that, we have to have a bigger audit and more detailed work. So that's number one. Number two, we're going to request the standard motion that we do every year to grant me the authority to adjust the budget through 6/30 to ensure the balanced budget and report back at the July 7th meeting. For those in the audience that don't know, finance officers in the state of North Carolina are authorized to do this without contacting anybody. But pursuant to my desires and council's agreement, we have never done that. Every adjustment to the budget is vetted and brought before this council, with this one exception, so that we can balance by the end of the month. And that's what we've done since 1998. And then the last, I do have a minor budget adjustment. That's a few key items. Total adjustment is $13,492 out of our fund balance. This is a couple $100 increase for disability insurance, $7,000 increase in the line item for professional services under accounting. We've had some additional work because of the grant work, so that is up, and also the auditors had to do a little extra work this last year. Office supplies up by $1,000, equipment lease up by $1,000, increased workload and copies and all like that has increased those. Small increase in liability insurance for admin of $321, a little more security monitoring of $250. Parking liability insurance increased by $185. And then there is one increase here that I am happy about. You very rarely hear me say that. We need to increase our contribution to other agencies under the parks by $3,500. This is for the senior resources of Guilford County. They have been doing outreach to the senior citizens in our community and providing quarterly meals, various activities. It could be blood pressure checks, it could be a medical lecture, it could be a variety of things. And during COVID, it really went down. But they expanded what they did for our community, for our senior citizens. They kept tabs on the elderly and people that came by to get the takeout meals. If someone missed, they did follow-up calls. They checked on home visits and things like that to make sure that everyone was okay. That's not in our contract anywhere. They did that because they're a good organization. We've worked with them a long time, and this is bouncing back to where we were pre-COVID. So I take that as a very good sign of money well spent. But the total would be a budget adjustment of $13,492.
$492.
So I have 3 requests for vote.
Okay. So those should be 3 different.
492, 13,492?
13,492, yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Let's first invite a motion on the Water Enterprise Fund.
Yes. Madam Mayor, I would like to approve a motion to approve the establishment of the Water Enterprise System, or fund, excuse me, and seed this new fund with $50,000 transferred from the general fund.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries and the Enterprise Fund seed money is approved. Number 2, we need to grant the authority to the finance officer to adjust the budget. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we grant the finance officer the authority to adjust the budget through 6/30/2022 to ensure a balanced budget. And he will report back to us at our county council meeting about those actions on July the 7th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries and the authority to the finance officer is granted. Next, we need the budget adjustment of $13,492. Is there a motion?
I also make the motion that we do a budget adjustment in the amount of $13,492 for the various and the sundry items listed by the financial officer. And I too am very glad to see that there was $3,500 increase for senior resources.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And finally, I think we need a motion to accept the financial report as presented.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the financial report as provided by the Chief Financial Officer.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and the financial officer's report, can't talk, is approved. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
council.
job.
Thank you.
We will now move to committee reports, and we do want to keep these under the 3-minute limit. This is a long meeting. I apologize to everyone, but we're getting a lot of good work done tonight. We will start with Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Mr. Browning.
Hello again, Council. I'm John Browning, 8024 Linville Road. Here to give the report for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for May 2022. We had our meeting May 19th, both in person and electronically. The big part of our meeting was going over the Music in the Parks subcommittee recommendations that John Garrett detailed, so I won't go over that again. We have unanimous support and are excited about those recommendations that John detailed. Just a couple quick items we'd like to highlight. We approved a request from the Northwest High School Band Boosters to use the amphitheater for Movie in the Park. Date to be determined later, but the band is real popular still, so keep on the lookout for that. Even though it seems to rain on our Music in the Park, we were terribly excited about this current year. The second Saturday seems to always have a little rain, so we've had good crowds and good bands, and we got our fingers crossed that everything works out good for our upcoming Music in the Park, which is June 11th, which is a bluegrass band, Never Too Late. Always promises to be a good time out there at the Music in the Park. And we have Summit Church is having a Movie in the Park June 3rd. So any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks.
We'll move on to finance. Would you like to say anything additional? We will accept that as your report. Moving on to, we feel the same way. Moving on to Water Advisory Board, we still don't have a new chair, so I'll ask Councilman Sullivan to give that report.
Council, you've already voted on and approved the major work that we accomplished at our last meeting, the water fees and charges. Our next meeting will begin our evaluation of the fire suppression study done by Ellie Wooten, and take a look at that with Chief Gibson and possibly with a representative of Wooten as well.
Thank you. We'll move on to Historic Preservation Commission. Ms. Schoenfeld.
Thank you. Debbie Schoenfeld, 8501 Sancero Farm Court. The Historic Preservation Commission met at its regularly scheduled meeting on May 18th. We approved a COA for Ryan Wellborn and Mary and Adrian Garvey for a detached accessory storage building at 8508 Merriman Farm Road. The Historic Heritage Grants Committee and the HPC approved 2 grant applications, one for the Donnell Stone House and one for a project at the Oak Ridge Military Academy. The committee for the Oak Ridge History Book met and discussed confirming scheduling and reviewing sample designs and font styles for pages. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning and zoning, did they meet this month?
No.
They did not. Okay, so that's why they're not here. Okay. Mountains to Sea Trail.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Farrell at 5839 Billet Road, and I'm giving the MST report on behalf of Ann Steele, co-chairman of the Mountains to the Sea Trail Committee. So the MST committee held its May meeting via Zoom on May 24th. We were very excited to announce to the council that the kiosk structure at the new parking lot on Linville Road has been built. On May 18th, Jim Grody and Ben Jones from the Friends of the Mountains to the Sea Trail came into town and built and installed the kiosk. They used that time to document a step-by-step process in order to develop a manual to be used when kiosks are built in other areas of the trail. The content panel for the kiosk is still in development. We hope to have a final draft ready to circulate for approval soon. The committee will be holding a trail work day on Saturday, June 11th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and we'll be working on maintenance of the Headwaters Trail at the Cascades Reserve and behind the Riverside development. We will also be installing a split rail fence around the parking lot on Linville Road. As always, thank you for your continued support of the MST committee. Are there any questions?
When is that work scheduled?
It's a Saturday, June 11th from 9 to 12.
June 11th.
No, thank you. And I guess you can just stay up here for conservation easement. Put on a different hat.
Stephanie Farrell, 5839 Billet Road. The Conservation Easement Committee met in person on May 18th at the Oak Ridge Town Hall. During the meeting, we had a few items on our agenda. We reviewed the list of properties that we identified as potential candidates for open space easements. The owners of the properties on the final list will receive an outreach letter with basic information on the Core Grant Initiative and an invite to meet with members of the committee to learn more about conservation easements, the process, and how the town of Oak Ridge will help facilitate both. In our meeting on June 15th, we'll repeat that process, but with the list of historic structures and properties. Next, we reviewed the draft letters that will be sent to these homeowners, to these prospective property owners, and these letters will be finalized in our June meeting. Finally, as I've mentioned in previous summaries, we've received a lot of interest from Oak Ridge citizens about the CORE program. Preliminary discussions are going to be held with one group of landowners in the coming weeks, and I look forward to providing you with an update soon. Thank you, as always, for your support of the Conservation Easement Committee and our efforts, and we welcome your feedback and questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate what you're doing. Special Events Committee, Ms. Dumchowski.
Patty Domchowski, 7320 Hidden View Drive. We had our Memorial Day ceremony, thanks to all that attended. Our scouts, as always, were terrific. Our tribute to Andrew Rizzoli was very special. Thanks to Gary Blackburn for the invocation and to Steve Nash on sharing his military experiences. We continue to receive donations for the Veterans Honor Green. Our engraved paver stone kickoff is going very well. We've collected over $1,300 within the past 2 weeks. Thank you to the Bank of Oak Ridge for their $750 donation, and to Jim and Janet Sandelli for $250. The committee continues to work on the Light Up the Night event scheduled for December. We continue to get more more vendors to appear and part of the community group to attend also. Our next ceremony will be our Veterans Day observance in November. Questions, comments? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Are we working on a parade?
I have to tell you that there was some sad news, George, on this. I checked with Mike Metzinger from the Scouts, because the next thing coming up was going to be the kids' bike parade, 4th of July. But due to lack of interest, it has been...
That's for the bikes.
That's for the bikes.
George wants the big parade.
I'm talking about
No, he was going to be included in the 4th of July bike parade. George was, yes.
So we're not going to have the bike parade?
No bike parade, no other parade, no
What about
car for you to
Christmas?
ride in, George, no.
Oh?
No parade, George.
Maybe in a future year, right?
Maybe, yeah, that would
Yeah,
be good,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll now move to community organization reports, but I understand that there are none tonight. We received a very brief report from Oak Ridge Elementary School. So we'll move on to item number 14, a second period for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak this time round? Mr. Anders. Oh,
Nope.
Micah, you'll be next.
I know it's late, and I'll make this very brief. Sam Andrews, 1829 Oak Ridge Road. Last month, I let y'all know about the reinterment of Andrew Rosoli at Arlington National Cemetery. I was very blessed to be able to attend that. It was a very moving procedure. Andrew was taken from Greensboro by Lambeth Troxler all the way to Arlington. And you know, with what I do for a living, we deal with a lot of governmental entities. The IRS is nobody's favorite friend, and everybody fusses, cusses, and discusses about the government. I do have to say, though, that up there at Arlington, it was very moving, and if everything in our country worked as good as those folks at Arlington, we would live in a utopia. They were very kind to every one of us. They handled it in military precision, and they had special time for the family. And I did learn something. Once a veteran is brought to Arlington, he is not left alone until he's buried with his brothers. They have a person designated after the family leaves to stay there and to be with the departed until the grave detail meets them. And then they escort the body with the grave detail to actually bury him. But it was very, very wonderful. The family got a lot of good support. There was actually a rather large funeral procession through Arlington with North Carolina license plates. Quite a number of vehicles. So a lot of support out of Greensboro. The minister, I think, that did the original service, drove all the way to Arlington to be there for the family. So it was very moving, and we do appreciate the Special Events Committee honoring Andrew. The firemen were there. We all appreciate it. And on a happier note, if anything good can come out of Andrew's loss, the scholarship program is still going strong, and I'm very pleased to announce that in honor, the strength and honor that Andrew showed, Haley Hill, the daughter of Captain Brad Hill, and Amber Long, the daughter of our admin assistant and HR lady, Gail Long, have been awarded scholarships again this next year. Both of them are studying nursing, one at Western Carolina and one at Appalachian. So it was a big month. It was a very low in the reinterment and very high in that the family's memorial to Andrew is still continuing after all these years and is benefiting. In another year, 2 new nurses will be active and working in North Carolina, courtesy of those scholarships. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like, oh, Micah, you wanted to speak.
Micah Spencer from 6315 Nesting Way in the Heron's Nest community. I just wanted to say that I do very much like the idea of renovating the Redmond House on the corner, and I know there was some discussion about if it was worth the cost to do, but I think it is because like a lot of the times, like I do hear people say that like I really like the Oak Ridge town community and like the historic homes, and then they'll say, but there's like 2 there just look like they're just kind of sitting there and nothing's like really being done with them. Like, and I wish they could fix that. And like I still really pray that one day the other little white house on the corner that you pass every time you drive from Kernersville to Lowe's Foods also could have something done with it, because I've been asked multiple times, like, what is that little house with the bamboo like growing next to it doing? So I pray like one day something can be done with that too. And then I also wanted to say that like before I left to go to university in DC, I did spend time on the Parks and Recreation Committee, and but I occasionally got to kind of like poke my head into the Finance Committee as well. And like I know a lot of the people who talked have left, but to my understanding, like everybody who is on, to my knowledge, everybody who's on the Finance Committee really checked and double checked like how the town money was being spent, and definitely wasn't, you know, spending it like without thinking about could everything be afforded. And so I don't think there's anything to worry about in that regard. And I think we all know this, but just to make doubly sure, like the Oak Ridge Town Council has no authority over like the education policy in North Carolina. Like I think everybody us know that. In my experience, though, the most important thing, even more so than like what kids learn from their teachers, is just having good relationships and being loved on by like a diverse community of people. That's really what forms their worldview more than like what a weird teacher tells them. At least that was the case with me. But so I just wanted to say that, and I very much hope that the Redmond House renovation goes well. Hopefully it's not just a senior center, since not everybody who lives in Oak Ridge is a senior. It would be nice maybe to have like perhaps like maybe you could have some lectures there about like the history of Oak Ridge and like North Carolina. I'd happily go to some of those, and but I'm glad that that's being done, because like I know, and I think that the historical preservation really is worth it, because I think that it actually does draw a lot of people to the town. It's like one thing people bring up a lot of times, so I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you for bringing down the average age in the room.
Absolutely. You know, that includes me. I'm
If
not a
we have
senior.
senior events, you can come visit with us.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If not, we will go to almost the final item on our agenda, council comments. We'll try to keep those brief as well. Councilman Sullivan, you want to start us off?
Sure. Not used to going first. Usually I'm last. It's a long meeting. I could not help but think back several years when Mr. Howerton was speaking. Roger used to be our mayor pro tem. He still holds the record for the shortest town council meeting. If you want to, it's kind of mind-boggling when we've been here 2 hours plus, 14 minutes. But I think that speaks to the town's growth. That speaks to the dynamic community we have grown here and built here through the intentional service not only of your elected officials, but of many, many, many volunteers that serve on so many vital committees that are so important to lead us in so many different events, in so many different community efforts. And it's not just the five of us that sit up here. That is the primary mover in so many of those things. It's you folks sitting out there, and we greatly appreciate your work.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pittman.
I'll try to be brief. I've just scratched out half of what I had for my comments. We were talking about schools, and we've talked about a lot of things tonight, but it's graduation week. So I want to say congratulations to all of the graduating seniors in our area. You have met the challenges, the very special challenges of the last few years, and you have succeeded. So many of our graduates have served our community well as volunteers, as student leaders. They've set examples, and we will miss you. But we are excited for you as well, and I wish you Godspeed.
Thank you. Councilman McClellan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can anybody hear me? First of all, I just want to say thanks for being here. I want to thank our volunteers, but I also want to thank you about something else. I mean, you know, we had a little election here about, a week ago or so, and I want to thank all of those who helped me You're, really, you guys, I know we came out a little short on that race, but the folks here in Oak Ridge, you guys really came through. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm ready to continue serving you here on this town council, and I'm honored to be your councilman. And I want to thank, if I've left anybody else, I encourage you, if you are not on a committee, we always have need for folks, and join the best town in North Carolina. Volunteer. Thanks.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to go to an event in Raleigh where mayors and council members from all over the state, plus representatives and senators were there. And I had great conversations with people, but I want to say that I love talking about what we're doing in Oak Ridge. And you know what? Most people love hearing about it, or they're faking it really well. But I was also interested to hear what they're doing, and I think we have a lot to share and a lot to learn. And speaking of sharing, I don't know that I remember a council meeting where we've heard from so many different people. I certainly don't remember a budget hearing where we've heard from so many people. And I appreciate that. I appreciate all of the comments. I know that it takes a little courage to stand up and speak at a council meeting, but I think you guys are getting good at it. And I also want to thank our staff. We've just been doing a lot lately preparing for this budget. Big things, little things, difficult things, and I thank you for your patience with all of us and your guidance for us, so thank you. But then we will now move to our final item, adjournment. Is there a motion?
Yes, let's adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned, and thank you for being here.